Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Maverick News Channel. Burger clone, let's all go to Burger Clone. I'll explain. And we'll talk about the new emails involving Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump. And we'll talk about the G7 foreign ministers in Niagara and more when we come back. Don't go away.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
We're back. And so is the Epstein story. Let's start with that tonight. We will get into this whole cloned meat and the approval to sell cloned meat to consumers in Canada. We'll get into that in a little while. But this Epstein story is rocking the political world tonight as House Democrats on the Oversight Committee have released 3 email chains from the late Jeffrey Epstein sent between 2011 and 2019 as part of their investigation into the Epstein case. The documents come from Epstein's estate. Epstein, convicted sex offender, died by suicide in jail in 2019 while awaiting trial on federal sex trafficking charges. His death has fueled ongoing conspiracy theories, including suggestions that his powerful associates were involved in his crimes. In one 2019 email to journalist Michael Wolff, sent months before his death, Epstein wrote that President Trump knew about the girls. That's in quotation marks, by the way. When I do this with my fingers, that's quotation marks. The message reads in part, Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. It appears to reference the soured relationship between Trump and Epstein, who were friends for years until Trump banned him from Mar-a-Lago. Trump told reporters back in July, quote, "He took people that worked for me and I told him, don't do it anymore. And he did it. I said, stay the hell out of here." The emails frequently mention a victim whose name is redacted, but the White House and committee Republicans are saying tonight that it refers to Virginia Giuffre, a prominent Epstein survivor who passed away in April. Trump has said Giuffre worked for him at Mar-a-Lago before Epstein stole her. Giuffre never accused Trump of wrongdoing and described him in her posthumous memoir as someone who couldn't have been friendlier when they met. We have copies of those emails right here. Let's bring them up on the screen. Yeah, so in this one, let's go to this one first over here. Michael Wolff, importance high to Jeffrey Epstein. And this is a reference, I guess, to the possibility of Trump being on the Lolita Express or at the house of Jeffrey Epstein. It says, "I think you should let him hang himself if he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, this is when he was running for president the first time around, you could save him." I think he was 6 months into the campaign at this time, generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of a political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime. Oh, we've seen that. That's for sure. And then if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? And Michael Wolff responding, I guess, "I hear CNN planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in scrum afterwards." So this is suggesting to Epstein that he might be able to use all of this as leverage against Trump. But a lot of this is vague, right? Because there's no context, not enough context around it to fully understand what is being said here. And you can see those black lines redacting the names. Victim, Mar-a-Lago, and then redacted. Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls and he asked Ghislaine to stop. So that seems to reference maybe knew about the girls, stealing the girls, maybe. And Trump asked me to resign, I guess, as a member of the club, Mar-a-Lago, but it says never a member ever. So resigned, but wasn't actually a member. Again, without full context, it's really hard to know exactly what is being said here. And it looks like Ghislaine Maxwell responded to that by saying, "I have been thinking about that." And then it's either 3 or 4 periods at the end of that as an open-ended statement. Responding to this here, actually, it says, and this is from Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell, "I want you to realize that dog that hasn't barked is Trump." And then the victim's name redacted, "Spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, etc., is 75% there." And that's when Ghislaine Maxwell responds by saying, I have been thinking about that, ... Which shows that Trump was at Epstein's house and was with one of the victims, possibly with Virginia Giuffre, for hours. What does that mean? Don't know. Don't know. Stay with me. I'm going to come right back. Just going to try and pull up a clip here for you.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarmingly, some media outlets publish things that simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
In an ocean of lies a century deep, the truth awaits. Choose not the red pill. Choose not the blue pill. For both are an illusion. Discover the power of M. The power of individuality. We are mavericks. We are the way to the light. Fear not the storm. Join our quest for truth. Truth will set you free. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So this is the story that keeps on giving to the Democrats and Trump's political opponents, of course. And tonight, they're making the most of it. Here's CNN putting the story front and center.
The Trump administration and President Trump appeared to be in something of a full court press to try and stop the discharge petition from working. Sources are telling CNN that top Trump administration officials held a meeting on this issue, not just at the White House, but in the Situation Room. Now, according to multiple sources, the meeting was said to have included the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, FBI Director Kash Patel, and Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert of Colorado. Boebert is one of the 4 Republican members of the House who has signed the petition. Now, the Trump administration and President Trump.
Isn't that interesting? So you have a president who is backed into a political corner. His political house might be on fire because of a potential illegal sex scandal involving potentially underage girls. And he has a meeting in the Situation Room with officials who would really be called upon to investigate such a thing. Is that really, that's like the fox calling the hens into the hen house for a meeting. It doesn't seem appropriate. Could you imagine if in Canada, the Prime Minister was accused of a crime, was under investigation, you pick your crime, it doesn't matter, and then called the Attorney General into his office to discuss the charges that might come about as a result of that, or the investigation that might stem from that, an investigation that might actually involve the Prime Minister? Could you imagine the furor, the outrage that would flow from that? But on the U.S. side, their system is so corrupt, and it is so corrupted right now that this is just washing over people. And then Trump says that he's out there, has been out there, trying to purge the deep state. Looks like the deep state to me. It looks like they're circling the wagons, and he is bringing in his political operatives, people that he has handpicked and placed in key positions to protect him. He's calling them in so they can discuss strategy and he can give them their marching orders. That's what it looks like to me. That is not so much speculation as it is analysis. And out facing the public in a forward manner, Caroline Leavitt saying, this doesn't prove anything.
Mary. Thank you, Kelly. 2 questions on this. In the interest of transparency, why not just go ahead, release the full files on Epstein, get this all over with?
This administration has done more with respect to transparency when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein than any administration ever. In fact, this administration, the Department of Justice, has turned over tens of thousands of documents to the American people. We are cooperating and showing support for the House Oversight Committee. That's part of the reason you are seeing these documents that were released today, because of the House Oversight Committee's and Republicans' efforts to get these out to the public. This administration also moved, the Department of Justice also moved to unseal grand jury testimony, which we know, unfortunately, a judge declined those requests. So this administration has done more than any, and it just shows how this is truly a manufactured hoax by the Democrat Party. For now, they're talking about it all of a sudden because President Trump is in the Oval Office. But when Joe Biden was sitting in there, the Democrats never brought this up. This wasn't an issue that they cared about because they actually don't care about the victims in these cases. They care about trying to score political points against President Trump, as we have, of course, seen with this government shutdown. And this entire thing, again, it's not a coincidence to the American people at home. There are no coincidences in Washington, D.C. And it is not a coincidence that the Democrats leaked these emails to the fake news this morning ahead of Republicans reopening the government. This is another distraction campaign by the Democrat and the liberal media, and it's why I'm being asked questions about Epstein instead of the government reopening because of Republicans and President Trump.
Well, that's a classic case of I don't want to answer the question because I know it's wildly unpopular.
Yeah, well, it's a story that won't go away. Let's take a look at what President Trump is saying himself tonight. Let's do the Donald Trump Truth Social scroll. Truth out. Truth out. Oh, here it is. What's Donald Trump truthing out tonight? Truth out. Donald J. Trump. In other words, the Democrats are using the Jeffrey Epstein hoax, he says, to try and deflect from their massive failures, in particular their most recent one, the shutdown. Here it is. They are trying to, and he continues with this post saying, the Democrats are trying to bring up the Jeffrey Epstein hoax again because they'll do anything at all to deflect on how badly they've done on the shutdown and so many other subjects. Only a very bad or stupid Republican would fall into that trap. The Democrats cost our country $1.5 trillion with their recent antics of viciously closing our country, while at the same time putting many at risk, and they should pay a fair price. There should be no deflections to Epstein or anything else, and any Republicans involved should be focused only on opening up our country and fixing the massive damage caused by the Democrats. So there's Trump's Truth Social response to everything going on. And you know, I just have to do it. I gotta run. Oops. Nothing to see here. Maverick and the News Brothers. We'll come back on the other side and continue with today's other top stories. But first, this.
They both look clean, but the guest list redacted if you know what I mean. can't release the names to protect the victims. And also Donald Trump. Coincidence? Just dumb luck. Right? Another sealed file. That crocodile smile. We did our best, says the DOJ, while the truth just fades away. Another new spin. No one will win except the rich guys with gold ID cards and closets full of secrets behind steel bars. Just a little glitch. A billionaire's privilege. That's the sound of the case. Closed.
Brightleaf Innovations is excited to offer our newest investment opportunity, the Turn Easy Bed Storage Solution.
Turns with a touch, spins all the way around. Every little thing you need is easy to be found. No more clutter, no more mess on the floor. Just spin it, reach it, you don't search anymore. Turn Easy Bed, spin your world around. Storage made simple, the best you found. Shelves your way, keep the mess away. Charge it, store it, night or day. Custom shelves for your books or your tech. Cozy space for your treasures to protect. Built-in power when you need to recharge. Smart design that makes your bedroom feel large. Turn Easy Bed, spin your world around. Storage made simple, the best you found. Shelves your way, keep the mess away. Charge it, store it, night or day.
Designed and developed by Brightleaf Innovations, proudly Canadian and patent pending in North America. Turn Easy Bed transforms how you live.
To learn more about this innovative new product idea and exciting investment opportunity, call 519-784-0222 or visit brightleafinnovations.com.
Okay, we're back, and is this a distraction or is this real? Kash Patel today. This is unexpected. He has announced that the pipeline to create fentanyl has been shut down in Mexico and worldwide, saving tens of thousands of Americans. Effective immediately, President Trump has shut off the pipeline that creates fentanyl that kills tens of thousands of Americans, he says. These substances are now banned, and they will no longer be utilized by the Mexican drug trafficking organizations or any other DTOs around the world to make this drug. He goes on and says the Chinese government agreed on a plan to stop fentanyl precursors. What does that mean? The People's Republic of China has fully designated and listed all 13 precursors utilized to make fentanyl. They've agreed to control 7 chemical subsidiaries that are also utilized to produce the lethal drug. This historic achievement has saved tens of thousands of lives. This historic achievement would not have been possible without the tremendous team of President Trump and the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, blah, blah, blah. Wow, massive, it says here. Well, is it? Like, so they've solved the drug problem suddenly? Well, if that's true, that is one hell of an achievement. Might be a little premature to declare victory. We have a clip. I've got it. I've got the clip. Here it is.
At a level never seen before. While at Ministry of Public Security headquarters, I met with my counterpart at MPS, where the Chinese government agreed on a plan to stop fentanyl precursors. What does that mean? The People's Republic of China has fully designated and listed all 13 precursors utilized to make fentanyl. Furthermore, they have agreed to control 7 chemical subsidiaries that are also utilized to produce this lethal drug. Effective immediately, essentially, President Trump has shut off the pipeline that creates fentanyl that kills tens of thousands of Americans. These substances are now banned, and they will no longer be utilized by the Mexican drug trafficking organizations or any other DTOs around the world to make this drug. This historic achievement has saved tens of thousands of lives. This historic achievement would not have been possible without the tremendous team of President Trump, the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and Ambassador Perdue in China.
I am skeptical, to say the least. The war on drugs solved just like that. Just like that. Solved. The war on fentanyl. Well, maybe that's good news. Maybe they'll stop blowing boats up off the coast of Venezuela. Maybe they'll stop. Maybe they'll just send the all those ships and F-35s, just send them all home and call off the invasion of Venezuela. Maybe. I don't know. Wishful thinking, seems to me. Now, back to Canada and international news. Niagara region, where, of course, we've seen the G7 foreign ministers meeting. So tonight, they've released a joint statement the G7 foreign ministers have, topping the agenda: unwavering G7 support for Ukraine. Ministers from Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, the US, and the EU High Representative reaffirmed Kyiv's right to exist and defend its sovereignty. They demanded an immediate ceasefire with the current line of contact as the basis for talks and vowed no forced border changes. Economic pressure on Russia, they say, will intensify, including measures against nations and firms financing Moscow's war. Sharp condemnation was leveled at North Korea and Iran for military aid to Russia and at China for supplying weapons and dual-use components. Discussions continue on using frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine. They just can't seem to make up their mind on what they're going to do with that frozen money. Well, Russia's strikes on energy infrastructure drew fresh outrage from these G7 foreign ministers, although we have seen Ukraine considerably step up its attacks on Russian energy infrastructure. And in fact, that is now the cornerstone, I think, of their military strategy. We have the joint statement right here. Let's put that up on the screen. We also have some clips for you. There's the joint statement. With regard to the Middle East, the G7 leaders threw full backing behind President Trump's comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict. I don't know if they actually mention, I know that they don't, there were any references to the Riviera of the Middle East, but they welcomed the ceasefire, hostage releases, and increased aid flows, but slammed remaining restrictions. All parties were urged to allow unhindered humanitarian access via the UN, Red Crescent, and NGOs. Iran was told to honor UN resolutions, resume IAEA cooperation, and join direct talks with the U.S. backed by the European trio. Attention will also stay on the West Bank. In the Indo-Pacific, ministers stressed a free and open region rooted in law, and they opposed unilateral status quo changes by force, especially in the East and South China Seas, and decried dangerous maneuvers, water cannons, and militarization. The 2016 arbitral ruling on the South China Sea remains binding. Peace across the Taiwan Strait was prioritized, with calls for dialogue and Taiwan's inclusion in global bodies. China's military and nuclear buildup raised alarms, while Korea faced condemnation. That would be North Korea, for its missile programs, crypto thefts, and unresolved abductions. Let's go to Canada's Foreign Minister, Anita Anand. We'll come back with Marco Rubio and give you a taste of their statements today with regard to this. First, on to Anita Anand. Here she is.
Tout le monde, and sorry to keep you waiting. I'm really happy to be able to chat with you this afternoon, and I'm going to provide brief opening remarks and then I'll take your questions. When Canada assumed the presidency of the G7 at the beginning of this year, we did so with a clear sense of purpose to help shape a safer, more stable, and more connected world. And since then, we have worked tirelessly towards this goal. Throughout our presidency, Canada focused on three priorities: protecting our communities and the world, building energy security and accelerating the digital transition, and securing the partnerships of the future. En juin, le Premier ministre Carney a accueilli les dirigeants du G7 à Kananaskis, un lieu qui reflète à la fois la beauté naturelle du Canada et notre leadership mondial.
But I can tell you that with regard to Haiti, voluntary contributions were urged for UN Security Council Resolution 2793, alongside a clear election roadmap and a new regional maritime security initiative. Sudan's escalating violence, particularly RSF attacks, and El Fasher and North Kordofan strong rebuke, with demands for a permanent ceasefire and aid access amid the world's worst humanitarian crisis. In eastern DRC, ongoing atrocities prompted calls for civilian protection and good faith peace talks under UN frameworks. Let's go back to
First, we reaffirmed our commitment to Ukraine's long-term prosperity, security, and defense. Canada has made it a priority of our G7 presidency to maintain and strengthen our support for Ukraine at every opportunity. Today, alongside Minister CFIA, I announced new sanctions against Russia to target those who are financing Putin's illegal war. We also turned our attention to the Middle East, to the urgent need for a path toward peace and lasting stability. We reiterated our support for the U.S. Comprehensive Peace Plan to end the Gaza conflict. And we continue to call for the unimpeded flow of humanitarian aid. Canada will continue to be a leader in this respect. And beyond that, we addressed Arctic security and cooperation, the devastating situation in Sudan, the crisis in Haiti, and other challenges that demand our shared attention and resolve. Au cours de la
Okay, let's go to Rubio. Here we go.
What we see now is they continue long-range strikes into Ukraine, obviously to degrade their electrical grid and try to demoralize the country or what have you. And they've made some gains in Donetsk, and they're losing 7,000 soldiers a week, 7,000 dead soldiers a week from Russia's side. So as of now, I mean, that's the assessment we have to make. They've made a demand that Ukraine can't agree to, and so we're sort of where we are at this point.
You didn't have any deliverables to bring from Washington on the Ukraine issue, is that correct, or did you?
Well, I mean, the president's done the sanctions, which is what they asked him to do, so that happened very recently. But as far as deliverables, we continue to do what we've been doing, plus we know the new sanctions.
Mr. Secretary, I was told by the European...
It's fresh fed time.
Here we go. Going back. Oh, we lost it. He's talking about Venezuela.
Not with me. They didn't raise it with me. They may have raised it among themselves, but they all came now from CELAC or whatever they were at. But it didn't come up once in any of the gatherings that we had, either last night or today.
Let me ask you about that. She told me that they discussed the legality and that there are two reasons why an operation would be legal: self-defense and a UN resolution. That neither of those applied in this case, that they are all struggling with the drug issue, and that they should discuss whether international law needs to be updated. So let me ask you about that.
I don't think that the European Union gets to determine what international law is. They certainly don't get to determine is how the United States defends its national security. The United States is under attack from organized criminal narco-terrorists in our hemisphere, and the president is responding in the defense of our country. I do find it interesting that all these countries want us to send, and supply, for example, nuclear-capable Tomahawk missiles to defend Europe. But when the United States positions aircraft carriers in our hemisphere where we live, somehow that's a problem. So I would say that the United States and this president has made very clear his job is to protect the United States from threats against the United States, and that is what he's doing in this operation.
And Canada's foreign minister says that they have been assured that the U.S. is using its own intelligence and that the Canadian intelligence is not being used. We've been told, or there are reports rather, that the UK is not sharing targeting intelligence.
Yeah, a couple points. The United States, there's reasons why we have those assets in the region, and that is to collect intelligence, and we're actioning on that. Obviously, I won't go any deeper when it comes to intelligence matters. I did see a CNN report yesterday. I'm not going to go into great detail and to say that it's a false story. It's a fake story. And what's happening now is people with a business card that has a government email on it become sources because they don't know, they're not even in the know. So they either have an agenda or they want to make themselves important. And it's been a plague of story after story that's either inaccurate or misleading. And that falls in the category of both, that story does. But again, going back, look, this is a counter-drug operation. The president's ordered it in defense of our country. It continues, it's ongoing. It can stop tomorrow if they stop sending drug boats. The Maduro regime is a narco-terrorist regime indicted in the Southern District of the United States for narco-terrorism. But more importantly, they're also a transshipment organization that allows these groups to operate from their national territory. They allow drugs to be shipped. They openly cooperate with the shipping of these drugs towards the United States and Europe, by the way, so maybe they should be thanking us. But the bottom line here is that the president is going to defend the national interest and the national security of the United States, which is under threat by these terrorist organizations.
Secretary, you met with your Saudi counterpart today.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about what is being discussed in preparation for MBS visit to the White House next week? And will the Saudis get a security deal that is better than the deal that Qatar previously got?
Well, we're still working through all that. I mean, obviously, all that will be announced just prior to or during the visit. But we'll have some good agreements to sign with them. A lot of progress has been made since the president's visit there. So we're working through that. I feel good about where it's at. There's still a few things that need to be tightened up and finalized. And we're going to have a good meeting next week.
Mr. Secretary, I'd like to go to another region.
Which one?
For that, Sudan.
Sorry. Oh, yeah. It's terrible.
Exactly. And I saw the communique that the G7 put out today. I mean, what is your take? Is there anything that can be done right now?
Unlike the Caribbean, which anybody who told you that was discussed is not being honest with you. Not a single person brought it up in any of those. And we had 3 meetings with the whole group or 4. That was discussed. And we're very concerned. As you know, we've been sponsoring this Quad initiative along with Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. And I think the fundamental problem we have is that the RSF agrees to things and then never follows through with it. So now what you have is a calamity on your hands. And so I had meetings on this yesterday. We've discussed it multiple times with multiple countries today. And I think something needs to be done to cut off the weapons and the support that the RSF is getting as they continue with their advances. I think it's telling, the humanitarian groups are telling us that some of the levels of malnutrition and suffering that they're seeing from some of these people who have been able to flee is unprecedented. They've recorded things they've never recorded before. And I think even more troubling is that they didn't have the number of refugees they expected to receive because they assume many of them are either dead or so sick and malnourished they can't move anymore. So what's happening there is horrifying. We have worked, I think, all the way back to July and August on this Quad because there are countries involved in helping these elements on the ground fighting. And we share many of the same concerns that others do about how that could turn into a nest for jihadist and terrorist activity. But the solution to it is not to fight a war where civilians literally are being targeted for rape, sexual violence, and murder.
Brightleaf Innovations is excited to offer our newest investment opportunity. The Turn Easy Bed Storage Solution.
Turns with a touch, spins all the way around. Every little thing you need is easy to be found. No more clutter, no more mess on the floor. Just spin it, reach it, you don't search anymore. Turn easy bed, spin your world around. Storage made simple, the best you found. Shelves your way, keep the mess away. Charge it, store it, night or day. Custom shelves for your books or your tech. Cozy space for your treasures to protect. Built-in power when you need to recharge. Smart design that makes your bedroom feel large. Turn easy bed, spin your world around. Storage made simple, the best you found. Shelves your way, keep the mess away. Charge it, store it, night or day.
Designed and developed by Brightleaf Innovations. Proudly Canadian and patent pending in North America. Turn Easy Bed transforms how you live.
To learn more about this innovative new product idea and exciting investment opportunity, call 519-784-0222 or visit brightleafinnovations.com.
All right. Back to Canada. We're seeing tonight that Donald Trump is not the only one embroiled in a scandal, either real or manufactured. This one seems very real. Peter Nygard. Prosecutors not appealing judge's decision to stay sex charges against Peter Nygard, fashion mogul. Crown prosecutors in Saskatchewan have decided not to appeal a Manitoba judge's decision to stay sexual assault charges against former fashion mogul Peter Nygard. CTV reporting out of Winnipeg, a spokesperson for Saskatchewan's public prosecutions says after careful review and consideration, the organization determined that an appeal would not be appropriate in the case. Provincial Court Judge Mary Kate Harvey ruled last month that the charges were to be stayed after Nygard's lawyer filed an application citing missing documentation. So Nygard still faces sex charges in other jurisdictions. He was charged in 2023 after police said a woman came forward with allegations she was sexually assaulted in Winnipeg 30 years prior. The investigation was then forwarded to Saskatchewan Justice for an independent review after prosecutors in Manitoba decided not to lay charges. Saskatchewan prosecutors say the criminal code only allows for Crown appeals due to legal errors, and that while the Crown argued for a different result, it did not find any legal errors to base an appeal. And that is the way the legal system works. The court heard the complainant accused Nygard of confining and sexually assaulting her in one of his company's warehouses in 1993. And as you probably know, the Nygard founded a women's clothing company in Winnipeg in 1967, stepped down as chairman after the FBI and police raided his offices in New York back in February of 2020. He was sentenced last year to 11 years for sex offenses in Toronto. He also faces a trial on sex charges in Quebec, as well as extradition to the United States on sex trafficking and racketeering charges. And also tonight, moving a story forward on the cloned meat controversy. This media release from Canada Newswire, which is a news distribution service used by companies and politicians, political parties, to distribute news releases. Canada Newswire posting this. Cloned meat enters the Canadian food supply without labeling or review. Now, this is out of Quebec, commissioned by a company called dubreton.com. Dubreton? I'll show you their website. First of all, they're they're in the business of farming. There we go. This is the company behind the media release. We will get you some English on the website. There you go. Bam. There you go. Bam. And so they've issued a statement. So as you can see, this is a big company. These are some of their products. Back to the news release. They're calling on farmers, food companies to voluntarily label cloned meat when putting it into retail for sale to consumers. Dubreton, a leader in certified humane and organic pork production, is informing consumers of an upcoming regulatory change that will allow beef and pork from cloned animals to enter Canada's food system without a safety review or mandatory labeling. According to documents published by Health Canada and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, CFIA, the planned update to the Novel Foods Framework will exclude cloned animals from the definition of novel foods. This change would remove the requirement for pre-market safety assessment and would allow these products to be sold without any disclosure to consumers. Health Canada claims that cloned meat is indistinguishable from conventional meat and safe for human consumption. Consumers have the right to decide for themselves, says Vincent Breton, Dubreton CEO. The government quietly changing the definition of a novel food means that unless it's labeled organic, there is no way to distinguish brands that support animal cloning from brands that don't. People want and deserve to know that, says Breton. Call to action. Dubreton is calling on responsible food brands to lead by example, urging them to adopt voluntary, verifiable labeling practices that give consumers a clear choice and help preserve trust in Canadian food. The company also invites its retail and supply chain partners to join in advancing transparency around animal cloning and gene editing production, helping make responsibly raised pork accessible to everyone. Rooted in 4 generations of agri-food excellence, Dubreton champions a world where human health, animal welfare, and sustainable agriculture thrive together. Recognized as North America's leading supplier of organic pork, with a growing global presence, Dubreton exceeds the certification standards of the Global Animal Partnership, Certified Humane Raised and Handled, and Canada Organic programs. Committed to a fair and equitable food system, Dubreton supports the well-being of farmers, animals, people, and the environment. So this is clearly a company that values and prioritizes food safety and transparency within the system. This is a company that follows the rules, understands the importance of some regulations within the food business, agribusiness, in order to ensure the safety of the food supply, and so that people can make informed decisions when they go to the supermarket, so that when you and I go to the supermarket, we know what it is that we are buying. And I'm all in favor of that, as I editorialized just briefly. You know, I used to joke. It's a long-standing joke with me. It goes back years. I said that I was going to start my own business, my own fast food chain or restaurant called Burger Clone. And as the joke is told, I tell people that mostly family members, because very few people found this funny. They would just scratch their head and look at me odd, like I was a weirdo. Yeah. I said, I'm going to open my own restaurant chain. I'm going to call it Burger Clone. And the idea is that it'll be one-stop shopping for fast food. So if your kids want to go to McDonald's, but you want to go to Wendy's, it's okay. Just go to Burger Clone. The business model is that when you go up to the counter, you can order from the menu. If your kids want a Wendy's burger, we've got it. If you want a McDonald's burger, we have it. If your wife wants a Burger King Whopper, we've got it. Except that all of our burgers are just copies, clones of each of the other fast food restaurant burgers. So we offer all the fast food offerings under one roof, and each burger is cloned so that it's exactly the same as the burger you would get down the street if you were to go and buy the authentic, the real thing. Oh, we've got that too, Coca-Cola. Anyway, I thought it was hilarious. That's why I put it in the thumbnail tonight. Did you see the thumbnail for tonight's program? Here, let me. I should bring it up here, I guess. There it is. There, I think it's hilarious. I crack myself up sometimes. I thought it was funny. Anyway, there we go. Let me pause it, lest we get video feedback. Burger Clone. I think it's funny. I hope you do too. I'm afraid to look in the chat. Oh, okay, I will. Dragon says, I love it. Love it. Yeah, I think it's funny. you know, when you think about it, though, it makes perfect sense because our society has created this environment and social standard where we want uniformity in our food. When you go to McDonald's, the reason you go there is because you know exactly what you're going to get. This was discussed extensively in some of the business classes I took back when I was much younger, going to college and university, marketing programs that I took. That's why you go to McDonald's. You go there not because the food is necessarily the best, not even always the cheapest anymore, but you know you're going to get a burger that looks exactly the way that it looks. A certain size, you're going to get a certain quantity of French fries, you're going to get basically a cookie cutter Happy Meal that's going to be exactly the same every single time. It's one of the things, that's one of the things that makes McDonald's so successful. That's why their fries, their French fries, are world famous, because the fries are very consistent in their size, their shape, their texture, and the amount of salt they put on them, which is as much as they can pour on without it falling off all of the fries. That's the way that it works. Another product like that, if you think about it, is Pringles potato chips. They were a huge hit back in the 70s and even the 80s. I don't know if anybody still buys those things, but they were all the rage for quite a while. And the truth of the matter is, those potato chips were made from usually kind of old rotten potatoes. They would buy these potatoes from the farmers, and then at the processing plant, they basically turn them into a paste. And then they get pressed out into a uniform shape. That's why every potato chip looks exactly the same, and they all fit in a stack into a tube, because they're not irregular in shape. They're exact. Every single potato chip is exactly the same in size, in shape, in texture, in the look. They're not burned when they're fried or however they make them. So they come out exactly the same every single time. And people like that. Admit it. When you go to the grocery store and you walk up to the display with all of the apples, do you buy the one with the spot on it? No, you buy the one that's red and looks, inviting. That's why pesticides are used, to keep the bugs off the apples, because if there's a blemish on an apple, they know it's not likely to sell. Nobody wants an apple with a blemish on it. We want our food perfect. That's part of what cloning is all about. But I think that there is a lot of misunderstanding out there when it comes to how cloning our food will actually work, or is actually working now, as this stuff is about to be placed on store shelves, maybe without any of us knowing it. I don't think that, my guess is, and I should go to the chat. Does anybody know what it means to buy cloned meat? It really, it doesn't mean necessarily that the animal or that the meat you're buying will be coming from directly an animal that was cloned. It means that it's more likely that you're going to be getting meat from an animal that is derived from cloning. What do I mean by that? What's the difference? The reason they want to clone these animals is because it will provide more efficiency in the system. And the purpose in cloning an animal is to target, to say this animal is, and it's the same approach that they use in farming with selective breeding. It's to say that this animal has certain traits that make it very attractive or beneficial or efficient for a farmer to use, so that this cow or this pig is very lean. It produces a lot of meat. It's genetically predispositioned to getting fat quickly and having and producing a lot of lean meat. So you take that animal and you clone that one, and you make copies of it so that other farmers can have basically this access to the same animal, and then they breed from that animal more animals like that one. That's really the idea behind it. And that's actually what is being done. So you're not just cloning like a million direct copies of a cow. You're making some copies, and then they're using those copies for breeding. And then the offspring from that cow becomes an animal derived from cloning. And those derived animals, that would be more likely the meat that you would be purchasing in the supermarkets. The studies are showing, from what I'm gathered from the research, is that the meat is indistinguishable because it's basically a copy. It's like an exact copy from that, that animal. Or if it's derived from, it has all those traits in it, but it's safe to eat because there's no genetic transfer of any kind from the meat to the human being when you eat the meat, because anything like that, is not preserved in the digestive system. Therefore, there's no risk in eating that. Unlike, say, eating an ostrich burger that has been infected with bird flu, if it's not thoroughly cooked, that virus could potentially transfer to a human being, or any virus could potentially, that has the ability to jump from a bird to a human or an animal to a human. You can transfer viruses in improperly cooked foods. So there's a risk of transferal that way. That's what a lot of people are not understanding. I think, especially when you hear terms like Franken beef or Franken bird or Franken burgers, I mean, absolutely, there's real concern there, but there is a risk of transmission from viruses, not a risk of like genetic transmission to human beings, because that's not like contagious. And if you eat the meat, you're just digesting the proteins and the minerals and the other nutrients from the meat itself. You're not ingesting the DNA and then that transfers into your blood for DNA to you. However, the bigger risk, as we've come to find out through history, is that selective breeding, or in this case, selective cloning of animals, can lead to unintended consequences, which can ultimately affect agribusiness. It can affect our food supply, because it can lead to a situation where you have certain genetic traits that are not only bred into animals, but also inadvertently bred out of animals. So, for instance, you might have an animal that is being bred primarily for scientific traits like more milk production or better beef. And those cloned animals with those traits are then bred conventionally to increase efficiency. But what happens through selective breeding, we've seen this especially with chickens, is while you're getting enhanced meat production because you're only breeding animals that are genetically predispositioned to produce a lot of meat with less feed being used, you might be then jeopardizing or breeding out things like immune system resiliency, so that you have more vulnerable immune systems, as an example, in birds. And so, yes, selective breeding, and this is even without cloning, has already caused major long-term problems by accidentally breeding out critical traits. And cloning can speed up and amplify those kinds of risks. And there are real historical examples from standard selective breeding. And we've seen this especially in, things like dairy cows, where through this kind of process, you've seen in some cases dairy cows become infertile. We've seen immune systems weakened in cattle. We've seen purebred dogs affected by this kind of crazy hyper inbreeding, leading to like respiratory system failures in dogs that are born because of an unintended consequence there. And you've even seen it in the production of corn and genetic manipulation of corn. In 1970, for instance, there was a corn blight, and 15% of the entire corn crop was wiped out because 90% of the plants involved were all genetically identical. So this goes back a long time. I remember covering Dolly the sheep. Does anybody remember Dolly the sheep? I mean, this is really where all of this stuff really took hold. You go back to like 1997, and this was the story that was probably the biggest story of the year. Now here's, I believe this is ABC and Discovery Channel with a year in review type program from 1997, and their lead story in this special broadcast, likely a year end in January, is Dolly the cloned sheep, the very first animal successfully cloned. It happened sort of unexpectedly, took the world by storm.
But perhaps the greatest achievement, and the most controversial, began in a laboratory. The creation of a sheep named Dolly, the first adult mammal to be successfully cloned. George Strait has this remarkable story.
When her unprecedented birth was announced in February, Dolly caught almost everyone by surprise, including scientists.
People expected that maybe at some time it would happen, but maybe we've been a little bit quicker than they expected.
Dolly is remarkable because she is a clone, the first exact genetic copy of an adult mammal. Scientists had cloned baby frogs, even mice before, but never a full-grown sheep. The trick was helping an adult cell act young again.
The key to this experiment was to induce the genetic information of a very specialized cell from an adult, in this case a mammary gland cell, to go back through development to produce an entire new animal.
To make Dolly, Dr. Ian Wilmot and his Scottish colleagues began with a 6-year-old sheep. They took a single cell from her mammary gland, everything, especially the nucleus, the cell's command center containing all the genes. Then they took an egg from a second sheep, removed its nucleus, and replaced it with the cell from that first sheep. The egg and its new nucleus fused together, turning it into an embryo, but one with all the genetic characteristics of the first sheep and none of the second. In essence, a carbon copy of that 6-year-old sheep. Finally, the embryo was placed in a third animal where it developed, and Dolly was born. It took almost 300 tries to create her.
Perhaps almost we should be surprised, not that things go wrong, but that it works at all, because this is a very hit-and-miss empirical sort of approach.
Other cloning breakthroughs followed. In Oregon, the first cloned monkeys. In Wisconsin, the first cow cloned from embryonic stem cells. And then, from the same laboratory that created Dolly, came Polly, a clone that carries a human gene in every one of her cells, the same gene missing in many hemophiliacs, which prevents their blood from clotting. Hemophiliacs don't make the clotting protein, but Polly may, in her milk.
You'd extract the protein that you want from the milk, purify it to a very, very high degree, extraordinarily pure product, and then you'd inject it into the patient.
Polly is exactly what the Scottish researchers were after, an animal with genes that could be used to help study and potentially fight human disease.
The reason why we started this technique was not so much to be able to make copies of animals, but whilst we are carrying out this procedure, to use it in a slightly different way to introduce precise genetic changes.
Genetic changes to create pigs with organs that might one day be transplanted into humans. Designing animal clones for our own medical purposes crosses an ethical line for many people. But it's not nearly as controversial as another potential application of cloning, making exact copies of human beings.
Cloning is objectionable to folks because they're afraid of designer families, families made up of copies.
Thank you very much. The U.S. Congress held tense hearings to address whether people should one day be cloned. One congressman said they should.
Human cloning will take place, and it'll take place in my lifetime. And I don't fear it at all.
But Dolly's creator disagreed.
I personally have still not heard a potential use of this technique to produce a new person that I would find ethically acceptable. And on that basis, I hope that you're wrong and that we do not see cloning in our lifetime.
Scientists say human cloning is years away if it ever happens. Meanwhile, they will keep a close eye on Dolly, watching her grow and making sure cloning has produced a healthy, normal animal. George Strait, ABC News, Roslyn, Scotland.
Yeah. Unbelievable. That was like back in the 90s. Technology has progressed, I'll put it that way, exponentially since then. And now it's here to the point where they're they are going to put cloned meat on store shelves. Cloned meat is to say meat derived from cloned animals. Might be a cloned animal, might be the offspring of cloned animals, more likely offspring. And you can decide for yourself if they voluntarily label this meat, whether you want to eat it or not. Why would they do it? Well, you go to the supermarket here, and they're selling chickens, roast chickens, like those hot chickens, pre-cooked, for $8.97. Think about that for a moment. What does it take from an economic perspective, to get that chicken from the farm to your table for $8.97 plus, well, there's no HST on it, on a roast chicken because of the way that the tax works. So there's no sales tax on it here. But $8.97. That means that the farmer has to breed the chicken, hatch the chicken, incubate the chicken while it's, and still in the egg, then keep those chicks alive, have them grow, feed them, house them in their little tiny locked in cages or free range, however they're going about that. Take care of it for X number of weeks until it reaches a certain size, then kill the chicken, get the chicken to an abattoir, get it processed, then ship all these out to supermarkets by trucks, right? Get them to the supermarkets where they are then roasted in ovens with energy, which costs money, and high value real estate, triple net lease on giant supermarket chain stores by somebody who's demanding anywhere from $15 to $20 per hour wage, cooking the chicken, then putting it out under hot lights again, using electricity to keep that hot chicken hot for how many hours? That those lights are on all day long, chewing up electricity. The store owner has to buy that chicken below cost. So what's the supermarket purchasing those chickens for? Margins very, very low on food at supermarkets because they really make their profit on volume, not on big markup. You might be looking at a markup of 5%, 7% if they're lucky. Not to mention that some of them probably might not sell, or there might be a problem. You're going to have some wastage, maybe. Some's going to end up in the garbage because something will happen. It gets dropped on the floor or who knows what. So to get that chicken to your table for $8.97, what does it cost to feed a chicken? See, this is why they keep looking for new ways to innovate and become more efficient and cut costs, produce animals that are genetically predispositioned to produce more meat or more milk, to produce more and eat less. It's not because they want to kill us. It's because they want to feed us, keep us alive, and keep us going back to buy more of those cheap chickens. That's how they feed the masses. That's how they keep us from rising up and trying to overthrow governments, because we're fed and food is still affordable to the masses. So they're using these kinds of technologies as the population grows. But at the same time, it's controversial. People then, especially when they politicize it, they point to this and say, well, it's not safe for this reason or that reason. And quite often, these are valid concerns. And I think everybody, you want proper labeling on foods. You want to know what it is you're buying. But then you have this larger problem now. Not just ethical, but just systemic, where when they're producing these birds or chickens, or whether it's pork or beef, cloned meat, if you produce a cloned animal and then that animal is used to breed, and then you get animals that are derived from the cloned animal, it seems like it's only inevitable. And in very short order, those animals derived from cloned animals are eventually going to be mixed in and bred with other animals which have not been cloned. And the food system at some point is going to become more and more integrated between cloned animals and not cloned animals. And eventually, it seems to me, you're not going to be able to distinguish. There will be some element of a cloned animal in probably every animal out there, which is sort of what's happened with even human beings over time, naturally. it's a strange ethical dilemma. And I'm not sure where it goes, but it is scary on many fronts, especially when they again start talking about maybe cloning human beings. You know, I don't think, because they are talking about doing things like that, and I think that that will happen probably in some other authoritarian countries where we have no say in what happens as they breed humans, maybe just for the organs. And how horrific would that be? Is a human being who is cloned, do they have rights the way that you and I have rights? Slippery slope opens a Pandora's box of ethical dilemmas. It made me think too about what's been going on out of that ostrich farm. Of course, this is all related to that. And I don't think that this announcement about the cloned meat, the timing of it, I don't think it's an accident. It's directly related to that, because I've been saying that what's been going on out at that farm is directly connected to all things political going on in Canada right now. And in particular, it's directly connected to all these agricultural issues, property rights for farmers. There's the whole COVID issue, which they don't really want to talk about out there, which is what they were really conducting the antibody research for. And then you have now this whole thing about the cloned meat, and it's all upside down out at that farm, because they've been involved with, even out of that farm, genetic research from the beginning, going back all the way to the 1990s, around the same time that all this cloning was going on with Dolly the sheep and these other animals. Same time period. That's when the Universal Ostrich Farm was established, ironically. And they were doing studies with the University of British Columbia, documented, talked about it with Dr. Stephen Pellick from UBC when he was on the program. He mentioned it. We talked about it briefly as part of the larger interview. Universal Ostrich Farm, absolutely involved in that, in a selective breeding genetic study, which he suddenly says that they can't find the paperwork on anymore. It's all suddenly vanished. That's very concerning to me and makes me wonder about a lot of things. That farm, one of the reasons those birds are as old as they are is some of those birds, 30, 35 years old, because they were used for that selective breeding study. Selective breeding, and that's in the court documents. People don't want to talk about that. This is an absolute fact. It's in the court documents. They talk about it. It's all listed right there. They make reference to it about how they would select certain ostrich chicks when they hatch, and if they had displayed certain traits, they kept them. If they didn't, they culled them on site, killed the baby chicks. Didn't want those ones, only these ones. So all of that was going on back in the 1990s at the farm. Ties into what's going on now with the Franken beef or the cloned meat issue. Then we see, and I was thinking about this today too, about that farm. You have this billionaire, John Katzimatidis, saying that what's really needed now is an investigation into what's been going on with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, an investigation maybe by the United States or other outside international investigators. This about a farm that's supposed to be against international standards and international foreign interference in what goes on in our food supply, and yet they're calling for a foreign government or foreign governments to get involved and investigate what's going on with the CFIA. And then I started to think, you know what? Let's have a full investigation into that farm. Let's do that. I welcome any investigation by a credible agency or hybrid investigative party that can conduct a real impartial, thorough investigation of what went on out at that farm. I'd love to know. what all the facts are, beyond what I've already uncovered with regard to COVID research in particular, and all of the activities that have gone on at that farm since the 1990s when it was first established, right up until this cull. Because the information that's being conveyed to the public through this network of influencers is incomplete. Selective information being regurgitated over and over again, and a lot of even inaccurate stuff being regurgitated, repeated on auto repeat for people to listen to get everybody emotionally charged up. And should save the ostriches, only now it's rise up against the government. I'd love to know who was actually involved out there, and why is there all this U.S. interest in was going on out at that farm? Why? Let's have a full investigation. Let's find out everything. Let's expose it all. I'm all for that. Because there's something going on out at that farm beyond what we've been told. That much is very clear. It involves the federal government. It involves COVID money. It involves research grants. It involves foreign money, obviously, foreign interference, foreign involvement, U.S. government involvement directly from the Trump administration, the FDA, a billionaire who's involved in the oil industry, both in the U.S. and Canada, the largest purchaser of Alberta oil. He's directly involved in this. And he's been helping to fund and fuel this information campaign. Let's have an investigation as we get ready to buy our cloned meat and find out more about what really went on out of that farm, at that open air biolab, where they were injecting those birds over and over and over and over and over and over again with COVID antigens to produce artificially antibodies in the eggs of the birds, which they then turn around and say, it's all natural. And we know that they were talking about vaccines. And here's the other little wrinkle in all of this stuff that people are being told about vaccines. And here's some food for thought for all of you as I kind of wrap up tonight's editorial soliloquy. The vaccines, the approach to vaccinations. When I say the word eugenics, I think it makes hairs stand up on the backs of people's necks, because it makes people think of Nazi Germany, Joseph Mengele, experiments, horrific experiments on human beings. Rightly so. And with regard to eugenics, that's genes. That's about building designer families, cloning people. It's about selective breeding. We don't want these kinds of chickens because we don't want those chicks because they're too scrawny. We only want the fat ones. We don't want that horse. He's too slow. We only want the fastest horse. So don't take care of that horse. We're going to clone that one. And that one goes into the wood chipper. Make glue out of that one. It's the same thing with, the way that they approach. If you think about it, only in this case, only the strong survive, which is to say also, let the weak die. That's the attitude. That is the danger in eugenics. And it's also misguided because, as I've just laid out for you, illustrated, and this is empirically provable, selective breeding or genetic engineering to bring out certain traits means that you're giving up other traits, usually as a consequence of that is unintended. It's an accident. Yes, it's like making a copy of certain paragraphs of a book because you like that paragraph. This chapter of the book, it's so good that we're going to reproduce that because that's the chapter. If I make out of this 2-hour video, there's a 15-second clip that I love, and people click on that, and I make a short video of that, and they watch that one over and over and over again. That's all you get, but you don't get the rest of it. You get a book with one chapter in it, or even one paragraph, and it's now you and you make copies of that. Now you have a whole book of the same paragraph, repeated over and over and over and over again. The rest of the story gets lost. That's what happens with selective breeding, with cloning, genetic engineering, with eugenics. It's a good approach insofar as you can make food production more efficient, but at the same time, in the long run, it can result in horrific consequences, deformities, animals that have compromised immune systems, making them vulnerable to illnesses. They may appear to be very muscular and strong, but then die of premature aging. So too is it with the attitude with vaccinations, with taking a completely natural approach to medicine and completely rejecting modern medicine, relying entirely on natural immunity, herd immunity. There is a downside and a consequence to relying entirely on that and not on other measures, including culling of animals. It's controversial. It's something that certainly deserves to have larger debate, but you have to keep in mind that if, for instance, out at the ostrich farm, they had been successful, and if they are successful in having the cull policies, the stamping out policies of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, our government, other governments reversed, what happens when bird flu spreads through chicken operations? Those farmers will suffer because the chickens will suffer. Chickens, the populations will be largely wiped out, 90-some%. The compensation programs will be gone for the farmers unless they implement some sort of alternative insurance for them. The birds will die over a week, 2 weeks. The virus will be present on the farm for a much longer period of time as the birds die out, bleed out, and suffer and suffocate in their own fluids produced from the illness. And the farmer then goes through a longer period of time before they can reintroduce new birds to the operation safely so they can resume production. With the policy in place the way that it is right now, they go in, if there's an infection detected, they cull the entire flock. The birds don't suffer in the way that they would if they were just left to have their brains swell up and bleed out and become so dehydrated while fluid fills their lungs, such as they are in birds and chickens, and die a slow, painful death over a long time. And instead of that, they call the birds, get them all out of there, sanitize the place, get them back into operation as quickly as they can, compensate the farmer for the lost birds, and production resumes because it's a food production facility so that we can have $8.97 hot chickens at the supermarket that are not infected with bird flu, and it's cost effective. The point that I was kind of alluding to prior to that, though, is as you look at the totally natural approach to things, if you're relying entirely on herd immunity and hoping that that will be what progresses or develops over time by allowing birds to be exposed to bird flu or any other virus like that over time, that can take generations, if it happens at all. Some species of animals go extinct from different kinds of illnesses. It's also a historical fact. Not to say that bird flu would necessarily result in the extinction of species, but if you rely entirely on nature, it would take many, evolutions, generations of birds breeding and passing on genetic traits just naturally. And you're hoping that that will happen over time so that the immune systems become more robust and more resilient against specific kinds of illnesses like a bird flu. And that could take years, decades, could take 100 years if you just rely on a natural process like that, if it happens at all. Meanwhile, farmers would have much less efficient operations, and you ain't paying $8.97 for a chicken at the supermarket anymore. I'm not trying to defend one approach or the other. I'm just pointing out the upside and the downside of both. And I point this out to you too. You see, people would say, well, you have to have the natural approach, but transpose that, because out of the farm, they've been talking in terms of, it's just like COVID, or they try to put it into human terms. So let's flip that around and look at it at this scenario, the natural approach in human terms. And very few, I don't know if anybody really looks at it this way, but that in itself is sort of an approach to eugenics. Because if you take modern medicine out of the equation, when you're looking at something like a pandemic or any kind of illness that might spread and might result in death among a population, say among children or whomever, what you're really saying is we want a natural approach. We don't trust big pharma. We don't want vaccines. We don't want any of this modern medicine. Just let nature run its course. Then you're going to have people die. Because only the strong will survive. But we as a society have invested a lot in medicine, medical research over many, many, many generations, thousands of years really, when it comes to medicine, because we have as a society have said we value human life. We value all people. We even value the weak ones, because we don't want to selectively breed humans, because that is unethical unless you're a eugenicist and you believe in building a superior race. We've said, no, all people matter. As I've said, all life is essential. We are all essential. That's what they got wrong during the pandemic. Only as, these people get to go to work. These people are essential. You're not essential. You stay home. We're all essential. That's why, when I see people belittling people with no legs and one arm, you're missing the bigger point, because human beings are not animals. And even animals, every animal has value. But animals are not people and they don't have rights. Doesn't work like that. But we as human beings certainly do. And more than that, we as human beings have extreme value, even if we are one of the weak ones. And so all human life is worth preserving and saving and working on saving, investing in through medical research and making medical care available to all human beings. Because in one way or another, we all have things we can contribute. Everybody. Just because this guy has big muscles and can skate fast and shoot a puck and score by putting a puck into a net, he's valuable for that. But this guy over here in the wheelchair, he can't skate at all, but he's really smart. In fact, he might be a genius like Stephen Hawking. And so you don't cull or kill or let somebody like Stephen Hawking die if he becomes ill. You give him medicine. But if you just let nature run its course, people die. And we say no. That being said, you also shouldn't force people if you believe in freedom. So really, it comes down to choice. What do you want as an individual? What's good for you? What do you decide is good for you? You need to respect people's rights. It becomes a balance, doesn't it? And it's a complicated equation. Rights, property rights, the rights of other people. How are your rights limited? What should you be forced to do, if anything? Should you be forced to take this injection or not? Should you have access to the injection if you want it, even though some other people may think that it will kill you? But you believe it will save you. Freedom. Informed consent. Good information, factual information, true information. That's why right now, more than ever, it's imperative that people tell the damn truth. That we are given factual information, especially when it comes to something like what is going on out of that damn ostrich farm. We need the truth. We need real information because that does affect where we go with policies related to our food policies, our laws, our medical research. And if what we're told is not entirely truthful, then we as a society do not have the right information to make the right choices, to develop the right policies, to keep people alive, to make our society better, to feed the hungry, to treat the sick, to honor and respect the rights of every human being, and also make sure that we protect the weak as much as we protect the strong, and that we don't just throw people away. But some people don't see the big picture, and they think it's okay to lie. They think it's okay to spin up a narrative or provide selective information or not provide all the information or be entirely honest, as long as they get what they want, some political outcome. That's sick. That leads to disaster. And that makes me wonder what the hell is really the objective behind some of this and what's being hidden beyond what I already know. But so many are quick to deny or pretend doesn't exist or choose not to see. And why are so many people so eager to shut me up? Because you know why. Because it's not about the damn birds out there. It's about cloned meat. It's about policies. That's what it's about. It's about the 51st state. It's about foreign interference in Canadian politics. It's about separatism. It's about big oil. Big money. It's about clicks, views, YouTube revenue. Truth be damned. Get you all upset. Get you angry. Get you emotionally invested. Don't tell anybody the truth. Just use fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Get people emotionally charged up. The poor personified birds. Lots of tears. Lots of screaming. Theater. Yeah, sorry. I ain't shutting up. And with that, I'll see everybody back here tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Eastern. On the flip side, take it away, Maverick and the News Brothers.
Lock me down, push me around, slander my name all over town. Call me crazy, hack my sites, get me banned, I'll still fight. So you'll never shut me up, you'll never hold me down. Go ahead, unleash your mob, run your little censorship job. It just proves you're scared of me. Too bad, baby, I was born to be free. Kick me out, try to make me quit. Throw sticks and stones, I don't give a bit. Run your mouth, I'll call your bluff. Here I am, you'll never shut me up. You'll never shut me up. You'll never hold me down. Go ahead, unleash your mob. Do your cancel culture job. It just shows you're scared of me. Too bad, baby, I was born to be free. Yeah, say what you want, do what you please. You'll never shut me up, you'll never hold me down. Go ahead, unleash your mob, do your cancel culture job. It just shows you're scared of me. Too bad, baby, I was born to be free. I was born to be free. Oh yeah, I was born to be free.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.